sometimes there's situations that you'll find yourself in and you just kind of get like that sixth sense or gut feeling. It's more of kind of like, a red flag situation, and I think that's a good thing that we should talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think I was thinking about this earlier on the drive back here, and I think there's like when you think of it in life, whether is for emergency, like cases in which there's like an emergency happening. Like we have different systems in place to let people know there's a danger, whether it's an alarm system that goes off or like flashing lights that go off to let you know that something is wrong. So in that specific scenario, you should almost you should do something to
Right.
get off arm's way or anything. And in life, I feel like whether it's with circumstances that we get in or with people that we encounter, we should also develop that mechanism almost, that helps us identify different things that are kind of those flashing lights or those alarm systems that tell us, hey, and not necessarily get out of here, but at least consider, like look at the situation at the person objectively, and this might be something to pay attention to, and it might be a message for you to either get out of there or like adjust something. And so I think it would be just like in life with like buildings and things like that. It's an important feature that we have because it keeps us safe, and it's a smart and wise thing to do. I feel like in our personal lives as well, it would be a wise thing to do that can save us time, pain, and just tragedy moving forward. So I 100% agree. I think it's an important and honestly necessary topic to talk about because, I mean, besides stranger danger, nobody talks about this ever, like in school.
True.
This is not necessarily something that's taught. But yeah, so I guess let's dive into it. What are some of the, and this could be either based on experience or just thinking about what are some things that you see as possible red flags, and it can be either with people, situations, whichever angle you want to take with that.
Okay, great. Well, let's go with, I think, the people situations. Because like you said, I mean, my experience like going through school was you could identify like bullying, right? It was kind of like the main thing. But then when it comes to like your friendships, your relationships, your interaction with people, like that red flag thing, yeah, I don't think it was taught as much. So from experience, red flags are inconsistencies that you start identifying among individuals. Or a big one is when you're trying to be productive and there's this encouragement from that other individual to break your productivity at expense of maybe spending time for them. Because I think, especially with this day and age and how busy people are, it's important to be productive when you can and make sure that you're on your schedule. Because you'll find that, especially if you're predispositioned to be a giver and you're more generous and you like to really enjoy and have a drive for doing things for other people, you will most often encounter people that are the flip side of that just like to take things. And that's, it's part of it's just who they are. But when a giver and a taker match up, the giver is the one that usually loses. So kind of noticing red flags, unsolicited requests for favors. Or you do this, I'll do that for you. Or, I did this for you, can you do this for me? I remember in college there's this guy that I didn't know, but he was in one of my classes. But he knew someone that I knew. He was a really good friend of mine. And so by that association, he automatically thought, well, you'll do this for me because we both know this person. I went, no. I'm like, of course not. No, I won't. And it was just simple as giving him a ride home to his place that was like clearly not the way I was going. And it was a complete inconvenience for me, and it was an easy just, sorry, no, I'm not available, I can't do that. But it was the persistence of like, oh no, you're gonna do this for me. And I thought, no, I'm not, and I don't have to. And then just simply putting my foot down early on in that engagement interaction prevented all future stuff. It was just, I didn't do that one thing, and then it's like I was never asked for anything anymore. I was never approached for anything from that person. And I mean, I'm sure it was completely harmless. They just needed a ride as opposed. But at the time I couldn't. I had somewhere I had to be, and I wasn't going to inconvenience my schedule to fail the commitments that I'd previously made. So that leads into the other part. When you have your commitments and then you start sacrificing your commitments, that's a self-flag in your own personal behavior. Whether that's caused by things that you're doing or things other people are asking you to do. I think that you need to really look at your day and see, okay, what have I committed myself to? And if you made a commitment and then you decide all of a sudden that you're not going to do something, okay, why are you not doing that? Is something interfering with it? Is someone interfering with it? And you have to really kind of pay attention, because like you said, like you'll get these feelings. And I think there's like a gut feeling, especially like maybe when you meet somebody or you find yourself in a situation like a dark alley in the middle of the night kind of a thing, or you see a stranger approach and you're like, okay. I think there's a lot of innate reactions that we get, whether it's a elevated blood rate, heart rate, just like, just the adrenaline rush and stuff. And I think it's your body's survival mechanisms just kicking in to be ready for like any given situation. So I think while red flags may not always prove to be life-threatening or fatal, it's still important to be consciously aware of them and to make sure that you're acting in a way that is appropriate to ensure that you get out of the situation.
Because, that's a good one.
Yeah. So for your experience, what was something where and if you feel like sharing, like maybe there's a situation where it was after quite some time, then you realized it was not going the way you thought it was. And then looking back, then you are like, okay, now I can kind of connect the dots once you got a little bit further with a person or a situation.
Okay. Before answering the question, there's a thought that came to my mind as you were talking. I think, and this one, I mean, take it as you may. This is just something that I think I could be completely wrong, but in my understanding, when I think about red flags, it's a way for you to basically choose a course of action, understanding what the consequence might be. Because I don't necessarily think that red flags, especially as I answer the question, like I really want to kind of like put that, it's not like a black or white. Like you see this red flag, it means run. I think it's more of, because people are wired so differently. People have gone through so many different walks of life that it's never like a black or white, this or that. But I really think the way to look at red flag, because there's people that are very close friends to mine that have some points that I can identify as red flags. But I think the power of it is being able to identify that this is a red flag that I'm willing to put up with, or that I'm not willing to put up with. Because I have some friends that I know for a fact, if I'm trying to get something done, they will distract me from it. And after a while, I can be like, hey, like, stop it, I need to do this. But they're some of my best friends, but they add that level of playfulness that sometimes I need, that help me get distracted from things when I need to, because I'm working too hard. But if you look at it on this linear, binary, black and white, then that's a red flag. That person needs to get out of my life. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I really hope like this is a tool to help you exercise your wisdom. And because once you can see these things, you can choose, oh no, in context, this specific red flag is something that because of whatever relationship you have with the person or because of whatever situation it is, I am willing to go forward with understanding that this is something that might keep happening, that this is something, but I'm willing to keep moving forward with it because in the grand scheme of things, it is beneficial versus being detrimental, Right. So I don't know. I just felt like I needed to bring it up. It's not like this formula thing,
Oh, definitely.
It's really something like a tool to help you exercise wisdom moving forward in life, and to just make decisions with a little more understanding of the context and the possible consequences and whatnot. So
more like it tells you what you may encounter by allowing it, versus give everything
exactly. And then it gives you the basically the option to make the decision, that's best for the course of action. Because in some cases there might be red flags, but anyways, I'm gonna stop there. I think that makes sense. Anyways, so now to answer the question, as far as situation, let's see. I mean, there have been relationships. In fact, that's an easy way to talk about that, because with situations, usually those situations are also caused by people or by yourself. But I think it's a lot easier with relationships. There have been times in my life in which I've been in relationship with people in which there was a significant amount of red flags that I chose to ignore. And it was, different walks of life, either because I felt like I absolutely needed the person, or I just couldn't see myself outside of that relationship, or because there was something I felt like, something of too much value I felt like I was going to be losing if that person wasn't there anymore. So I was willing to put up with all these things. But looking back, if I had, like I just said, like objectively look at it and actually put everything in context, I would have realized that it was a lot more detrimental to me than beneficial, adding up the pluses and the minuses. But obviously I didn't do that. So I would say that's one instance in which I saw a lot of red flags, chose to ignore them, and it ended up hurting me a lot, just because of because that's the thing too. When you understand, like when you notice those red flags and understand them, there's a compounded effect. You know what I mean? Like what you're willing to put up with today, you have to realize that you may not understand how that thing is going to hurt you necessarily in the long run. Mm-hmm. Like today you understand, okay, this hurts me like this in a specific way, but you know what I mean? And that's why I feel like the wisdom is so important.
Right. It's like
when it comes to this.
Yeah, what current level.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's one instance for me in which I've experienced it in relationships. Like I've been in a relationship with people and friendships in which I just chose to ignore way too much and not be wise about it, not actually sit and put in perspective. Because the other flip side of this is, if you're honest with yourself and really lay down the cards on the table and objectively look at your relationship with people, it's very easy to see if in a wholesome way, if something is beneficial or not. You know what I mean? Like once you start adding up things, it's very easy. But I think a lot of time we're just afraid to face the truth and the reality because of whatever, insecurities, like whatever they want to maintain. So which was my case in that specific instances. So it kind of became this trap. But yeah, so I would say is that. And I kind of have a question for you, kind of like revolving around that. How, because obviously it takes courage. Once you find those red flags, you realize that you do need to act for your best interest, and sometimes even for the best interest of the other person, to like end things or change the dynamic of a relationship. Because in some cases, that's what you need to do too. It's not necessarily we're done, but more like maybe I just need to spend less time with you, or we only need to do this, But in your case, why do you feel like are some things that hinder you? I know I mentioned insecurity and whatnot, but what are other things maybe that you feel like hinder you once you get to that realization of like, oh, this situation or thing is something that's not good for me? But what are some things that hold you from making that decision to make things better in the moment or in the long run, that you feel like maybe you've dealt with before, or that you just can think of that can hold you in that place of not actually making the changes that will be beneficial for the situation?
So that's I think, common experience that most people have. And I know I've dealt with it multiple times throughout my life. And part of expanding on what you previously discussed, in which you're afraid of what you're going to lose, or you talked about, you thought that there's someone in your life that you can't live without, or that you really need them. At the moment of realization for me, when discovering that either through a relationship, friendship, individual is no longer benefiting me, or is not necessarily thinking of it as, okay, if somebody isn't valuable to you, then because you may have relationships and friendships where it's not the aspect of the expectation is this individual is supposed to bring you up to here, but it's a positive, or maybe even just a neutral because of the limited interaction you have with them, as long as it's not negative, right? That's the goal, as long as it's not negative. And then just deciding for yourself, what are you willing to spend your time, energy, and effort on? So you get to this point where you realize that whether it's red flags you've chosen to ignore, or red flags that you accumulate them on, and I think of it just like, like a visual, like imagine like every single vice or thing with a situation or interaction was an actual, like a stone. And so like you can hold a couple stones. You can either probably, if you hold both your hands together, you can hold a whole armful of stones. But as the stones and the weight and the severity, it's like all these red flags, all these negative things that are associated with an event, it impacts your ability to be able to function well. And so once you recognize that you're impacted by your ability to function well, if the solution is to remove the individual or scenario behavior that's causing these red flags to continue to perpetuate, your immediate thought for me was, okay, well, this is what I'm going to lose. And sometimes it's hard to calculate going back to the reward or to what you were before, because you've now, whether you've gained something that is positive or negative, you have gained something and you're gaining this experience. But you may be gaining a great experience that part of that experience is to encourage you to act on your behaviors or situations in a more positive way. But you continue to just hold on to this negative thing, this negative person, negative relationship with I think is an often common fear of losing what it is, or fear that you won't be able to recover from it once it's gone. Whether that's a voice that the other person tells you or it's a voice you've internalized within yourself. So I think that it's a lot of fear because people just fear what they'll lose. And then I think another thing is people's pride. Because you've made a decision and you're not getting a great return on your decision. And when you really, especially when you heavily invest in someone or something and it's really poorly paying you out, you may be more patient, think, okay, let me just wait. If I just do that. And then now you're compromising with a negative situation or with a negative person. And you may not even be having a conversation with them. It's all in your mind and in your heart. And you're thinking, okay, if I can get them to this, if I can wait till there, if this happens to that. And you're putting all these conditions on as excuses for why you continue to put up with or allow this behavior in your life. And I think at that point, it has to take such a, unfortunately, negative impact or an external force. So we'll just say, it takes an external force, whether it's a person or an experience, to cause you to really, hopefully, mix things up and stop that behavior.
That's good. That's very good. And I want us to, before tackling another question, to just something that can be helpful for us to just mention out loud, but also for people listening, to just go around back and forth, and just talk about like a few things that are actual red flags, whether it's like situations or like in people that we can think of, and just like mention a few. We don't necessarily have to expand on them, but just like to mention a few to like people to start being like, oh, okay, like I can see that, and like feel free to add some more in the comments too, if you guys can can think of some more too. So do you want to go first? Or you want to go first?
So like I would say one is like dishonesty.
Ooh, so good. Oh my goodness, so good. One that I think about is complaining. I think and like people who, because there's always things that are bad about life, always things that are wrong. So I'm not saying like ignoring it or anything, but people who only find the strength to notice and talk about what is wrong and never find the strength and focus to see anything that's good, usually that's an absolute red flag. Because usually those are people who have a hard time like seeing the good around them and thus allowing more good in them. And so all they want to do is bring more negativity into your world. So that's also all you see. And sometimes it's not that they do it because they want to. Sometimes it's because of how they program and everything. But that's, to me, it's a big red flag. Because, I just try as much as I can to like not allow too much negativity in here. And not being blinded to it. But I just don't want it to be, part of my ongoing world. And so because of that, I feel like to me, that's like a big no. Like someone who only see negative, bad, like downhill, like God, I absolutely stay away from that. So I'll say that's the big one for me.
Another one I would say would be people who impose their limiting beliefs on you. Because when you're trying, especially if there's something you really want to do, you genuinely want to try a skill or an occupation you're pursuing or a life goal that you have, and you tell it to, and you got to be careful. I think oftentimes people, you got to realize that when you tell someone you're going to do something, that's not their responsibility to tell you
very true
what you want to hear. They're going to tell you what they'll tell you, whether or not you want to hear it or not, because you've told them. So if you say like, if you wanted to be a sports player or you wanted to learn how to play an instrument and somebody tells you, I don't think that would be good for you, that's a red flag for that person to just tell them, don't tell them your goals, especially with that, because
that's true.
It's a red flag for you if you care so much about what they think that you're valuing the opinions of other people more than the opinion and value of yourself. Because if you truly want to do something, even if you're not good at it when you start, if it's worth doing, then go for it. And then you can still decide along the journey if it's not, after putting in the energy and effort, whether or not it's something you want to do. But when you have people that from right out the gate, they want to stop you from doing anything, then that's a red flag.
That's good. Another one for me is people who don't, who purposefully, or at least repeatedly, refuse to acknowledge and respect your boundaries. To me, that's a big one, because I've had relationships before in the past in which people and again, none of this is always like very intentionally people want to do it, but it is still a red flag, So I've been in a relationship with people who just didn't want to see my boundaries, even though, because I try as much as possible when I'm in a heavy relationship with someone. If they don't notice it after a while, like I tell them, like, hey, like I just don't like these things, or I just don't like talking like this, or you talking to me like this, or me talking to you, if it keeps happening. And I've had relationships with people before, like just completely disregard it. We talk about it, do it again, talk about it, do it again, and after a while, it's like, because the reason why people have those kind of boundaries is it's because either it's to protect themselves, or either it's because they've experienced some kind of pain or trauma, and that that's just a place in which there's a safety within relationship. And people honoring those boundaries usually it helps build trust, first of all, and it shows that you care for me. Like if I tell you like, hey, like this is a wound, don't poke it because it hurts, and every day you keep trying to poke it and poke it, then like you just don't care about me. Absolutely. And so I would say, like, look in your relationship, like if you've told someone, hey, like this hurts me, or like this makes me feel bad about myself, or this like demoralizes me, and the people keep going back to that over and over, like something that like hurts you, brings you down, like that's an absolute red flag, and nobody should have to put up with someone who like blatantly, again, purposefully or not, just keeps trumping over your boundary over and over again, because like that literally hurts you on the ongoing, so that's, to me, like, that's a big red flag.
So it's kind of like, then in our previous episode we talked about the golden rule. You should expect people to treat you a certain way, but then it is naive or poor on your character and your lack of wisdom if once you recognize or experience how someone's going to treat you, to continue to expect them to still treat you in a way that's opposite of what they're actually treating you. Like if you have a toxic relationship and you expect them to treat you well and they continue to not, then that's just on you. You're willfully avoiding or ignoring this red flag that shows you that this relationship causes this type of reaction, yet you're still expecting this thing out of it. So then that's just being unrealistic. So I think with the red flags, it's to notice that they're there for a reason, and you can't necessarily, it's up to the individual to change and remove their own flags rather than you to try and dismantle them from your own actions.
That's good.
Because there's no amount, I think, of self-interaction behavior, for the most part, in my personal experience, where I was able to do enough for myself or change me in a way that made other people change themselves.
Nice. Oof, that's so good. Yeah. And these are not like an extensive list. I mean, there's probably hundreds of things that can go on this list. So feel free, guys, to like chime in the comments, or like let us know if there's more red flags that you can think of. But I feel like, to me, like, so those are definitely some of the big ones. And at least like it starts getting you thinking. You're like, oh my gosh, like that keeps happening a lot, type thing. And I guess we didn't say anything about situation necessarily, but there's one red flag that I thought about when it comes to situational, because even though it's still tied to people, like in that situation, but sometimes it's just you, like you keep putting yourself in this situation or whatnot. And something to think about too is, as far as situation goes, is something that keeps draining you.
Yes.
Every time you either in that space or do that activity or around those people, like it literally depletes you. And never, and it's one thing to like get tired from something. I mean, get tired from working out, get tired from sometimes like a heated argument or whatever. But it's another thing being like emotionally and like spiritually and like just drained and depleted. And I feel like once you identify that, I don't know, like a place or like a situation like does that to you over and over again, you need to get out of there, because like the like that literally means that it's sucking life out of you. You know what I mean? Which means the repercussions of that situation or place, whatever it is all over your life. Because like once you drain there, it means once you go to, like, I don't know, your friends, you go depleted. Once you go to your family, you go depleted. When you go to the things you actually love to do, you go depleted. And so it's literally robbing you from living your life to the best and enjoying life. And before you know it, you end up having a life that feels miserable. But it's because there's only this one thing that's like pulling life out of you little by little. And all you need to do is just cut that off, and all of a sudden your life becomes this, beautiful thing that is meant to be. So I'll say that's a situational red flag, at least. If it just keeps pulling from you, and find a way to start distancing yourself and eventually let go of that situation. But yeah, that's kind of like one last one I wanted to throw in there.
And to kind of finish things off, one of the things that I was thinking about while you're talking was I can't recall any decision I've made to terminate a negative relationship or interaction that I've regretted having done so.
That's good.
And I think, there's decisions that I've made where maybe they weren't negative, where it's like, oh, this could have had a better outcome. But what I'm talking about is you're doing something, or you're involved with something or someone, and there are those red flags that you've seen, whether you've chosen to ignore them or now you're discovering them after the fact. But I'm talking about the looking back on the experiences. I'm glad I'm no longer involved with that, or I'm glad I'm no longer in that situation, or with that person, or with those associated with those people. And I think it's important, if you find yourself in a new situation, to realize you've gotten to where you are today based on the experiences that you've had. And it's probably, hopefully, but maybe it is, but it's probably not your first time dealing with an uncomfortable situation with, whether it's a friend or a family member or somebody at work, things like that. And know that you can pull on your previous experiences to see that you can make that right decision, and you can cut this person or situation out of your life, and it will be beneficial for you.
Nice.
So having the courage to know that you've been there, done that kind of a thing, but there are ways that you can move forward from the situations that you have, and you too have control. I think that's another big thing. You have control over the decisions in your life and the people you choose to allow in.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, guys, that's all we have for you, but I really hope that this starts like just a train of thought moving forward, of realizing that being able to like know what kind of things are red flags and things that can literally help save your life in the long run, and help you disassociate from people in situations that are just not in your best interest, and we believe that's very important to the quality of your life, and hopefully you believe the same too. So I hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right. Yeah. Stay joyfully golden.